There are men in this world who look their wife in the eyes every single morning, say, "I love you," and mean it, and then drive 40 minutes across town and say the exact same words to someone else. There are men who have mastered the art of compartmentalization so completely that they don't even flinch anymore. They don't hesitate. They don't stumble over names. They don't mix up the stories. They have trained themselves to live in two completely separate realities, and they do it so well that the people closest to them, the people who sleep beside them, who raise children with them, who build entire futures around them, never see it coming. And the truly frightening part is this: most of them never get caught. Most of them die with their secret intact. But every once in a while, just every once in a while, the architecture collapses. And when it does, it doesn't collapse quietly. This is the story of Raymond Holt, a financial consultant from Charlotte, North Carolina, a man his neighbors described as reliable, a man his colleagues described as sharp, a man his wife, Diane, described as everything she ever wanted, and a man that a woman named Angela Mensa, 40 minutes across town, was raising a child with, a child Raymond had held in the delivery room, a child he had named, a child he had watched learn to walk, learn to talk, learn to call him daddy, while his wife of 11 years sat at home believing every word he ever said. This story is not fiction. The details you are about to hear are drawn from real accounts documented across news sources, court records, and the testimonies of women who lived through exactly this kind of betrayal. The names and some identifying details have been changed, but the truth of what happened, and what the two women chose to do about it, is completely real. Stay with me, because what Diane and Angela did when they finally found each other is something Raymond Holt never, in 11 years of careful planning, saw coming. Before we go any further, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Raymond Holt was born and raised in Greensboro, North Carolina, the second of 3 boys in a household that valued appearances above almost everything else. His father, a mid-level manager at an insurance company, wore a pressed shirt every day of his life, including Saturdays. His mother kept the house immaculate, and the family's private business exactly that, private. Raymond absorbed that lesson early. He understood from childhood that what people saw and what was actually true were 2 separate categories, and that managing the gap between them was simply a skill like any other. He was not a troubled child. He was not the kind of boy who pulled wings off birds or lied pathologically about small things. He was actually well-liked, personable, the kind of kid who made adults feel comfortable, who always seemed to know the right thing to say. He played baseball through high school, maintained a solid B average, and went on to study business at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. By the time he graduated, in the mid-90s, he had already landed an entry-level position at a regional financial services firm. He was 23 years old, and the future looked, by every measurable standard, very good. He met Diane Crawford at a work event in the fall of 1998. She was there with a colleague, not looking for anything. She was 30 years old, a paralegal at a downtown law firm, and she had, in her own words that she would later share with a close friend, stopped expecting anything too good to be true. Raymond changed that. He was attentive in a way she hadn't experienced before. He called when he said he would call. He showed up when he said he would show up. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. They dated for 2 years before he proposed, and when he did it in the living room of her apartment with a ring he had been saving for nothing flashy, just exactly right. They married in the summer of 2001 in a small ceremony outside Charlotte, 53 guests, an outdoor reception, photographs that would sit in frames in their hallway for the next 11 years. Diane was 32. Raymond was 28. And by every account, they were genuinely happy. That part matters. It matters because what came later was not built on a foundation of a bad marriage. It was built on a foundation of a very good one that Raymond decided wasn't enough. By 2003, Raymond had moved up within his firm and was handling a mid-size book of client accounts. The work required travel not constantly but regularly. 2, sometimes 3 trips a month, usually to other cities in the Southeast. Atlanta, Raleigh, Savannah. Diane had grown accustomed to the rhythm of it. She managed their home, continued her career, and they built the kind of partnership that functions on trust and routine. They had talked about children. They were in the process of trying. And Raymond, by all outward evidence, was exactly where he said he was and doing exactly what he said he was doing. Except that he was. Because somewhere in 2003, the same year Diane was tracking her ovulation cycles, and Raymond was saying he wanted nothing more than to start a family with her, Raymond met a woman named Angela Mensah at a conference in Atlanta. And he told her he was single. Angela was 34 years old, a project coordinator originally from Maryland who had relocated to Atlanta 2 years earlier for a job opportunity. She was warm, organized, and by her own description, not someone who moved fast in relationships. When Raymond approached her at that conference, charming, attentive, asking the right questions, she was cautious. He pursued her deliberately over several months, phone calls and text messages and trips to Atlanta that he logged in his work calendar as client visits. He told Angela he was unattached. He told her he had never been married. He told her he was focused on his career and hadn't found the right person yet. Every one of those statements was a lie. Diane was at home. Diane was his wife. And Raymond was constructing, with the same careful attention he brought to his financial work, the infrastructure of a second life. By 2005, Raymond and Angela had been together for nearly 2 years. Angela had introduced him to her family. Her mother liked him. Her younger brother thought he was solid. And in the spring of 2005, Angela discovered she was pregnant. She told Raymond in a phone call and she braced herself because they had not planned it, and she did not know how he would react. Raymond's response was immediate. He said he wanted the baby. He said he was ready. He was on the next flight to Atlanta. He held her hand at the first ultrasound. He was in the room when their son, Marcus, was born in January of 2006. And then he drove back to Charlotte, walked through the front door of the home he shared with Diane, and said nothing. Not a word, not a flicker. Diane never knew. And Raymond had now crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. He was not just a man having an affair. He was a father to a child his wife did not know existed, a partner to a woman who did not know she was the other woman, and a husband who had decided, apparently, that he could maintain all 3 of those realities indefinitely. The system Raymond built over the following years was, in its own disturbing way, elaborate. He maintained 2 phones, one that Diane had the number to, one that Angela knew. He kept his travel schedule deliberately variable so that extended absences in either direction had a plausible explanation. With Diane, it was work. With Angela, it was also work, plus the occasional claim of family obligation. A sick parent, a brother with problems, things that required him to be away for days at a time. He was never fully present in either home, but he was present enough that neither woman thought to question the gaps. He contributed financially to both households. The money Angela received as child support and household contribution, Raymond had arranged as direct transfers from a business account that Diane did not monitor. This is important. It was not a dramatic deception. It was a procedural one. Quiet, administrative, the kind of arrangement that only fails when someone looks closely at the paperwork. And for 8 years, no one did. Marcus grew up knowing his father as a man who came and went. Angela had learned to work around Raymond's schedule because Raymond had framed it as unavoidable, demanding clients, a boss who required constant availability, a career that didn't allow for the kind of routine a family needed. Angela found this frustrating, but she accepted it because in every other way Raymond was consistent. He showed up for Marcus's birthdays. He made it to the school play. He called every night when he wasn't physically present. He said the right things. He was managing her expectations the same way he managed a portfolio, constantly recalibrating, never letting any one account sit unattended long enough to raise a flag. Meanwhile, in Charlotte, Diane had stopped trying to get pregnant after 2 rounds of IVF that hadn't worked. It was a grief she and Raymond carried together, or so she believed. She didn't know that 600 miles away, a 9-year-old boy existed who was proof that the problem, biologically, was not Raymond's. The crack that eventually brought everything down was not dramatic. It was not a lipstick collar or a discovered hotel receipt. It was something far more mundane, far more modern, and ultimately far more devastating in its simplicity. In the spring of 2012, Diane's laptop died. She borrowed Raymond's personal laptop to pay a bill online. She wasn't snooping. She wasn't suspicious. She was paying a water bill, but Raymond's email was open in the browser, and it was not his work email. It was a personal Gmail account that Diane had never seen before, an account with a name she didn't recognize. The inbox was visible, and in that inbox at the top of the stack was a message from a woman named Angela with a photograph attached. The subject line said, "Marcus lost his first tooth, thought you'd want to see." Diane did not scream. She did not throw the laptop. According to what she later described to her closest friend, she sat completely still for a very long time. She looked at the photograph. A boy around 6 or 7 years old at the time, grinning at the camera with a gap in his front teeth. A woman's hand in the frame, just the hand, bracelets on the wrist. And a child who had Raymond's eyebrows, Raymond's jaw, Raymond's exact expression when he smiled. She closed the laptop. She went to the kitchen. She made herself a cup of coffee, and then she sat down and began to think. What followed was not a confrontation. That is the detail that makes this story different from so many others like it. Diane Holt did not call Raymond. She did not fire off an accusatory message. She did not tell her sister, not yet, not immediately. What she did was open the laptop again, very carefully, and begin to read. She read for 3 hours. She read emails going back years, the kind of archive a man accumulates when he never expects anyone to find it. She learned Angela's last name. She learned where Angela lived. She learned the child's name, his age, his school. She learned the dates of their relationship. She did the math. Marcus was born in January of 2006. Raymond had come home from a business trip to Atlanta in early 2005 talking about a conference that had gone well. She remembered that trip. She had ironed his shirts for it. She had packed his suitcase. And while she was doing that, while she was smoothing the collar of the shirt he would wear to that conference, Raymond was meeting the woman he would spend the next 11 years lying about. She did not confront Raymond that night, or the night after. She spent 2 weeks quietly gathering information, the address, the school district, public records, anything she could find from open sources that confirmed what she now believed she knew. She was not reckless. She was not impulsive. She was a paralegal. She understood documentation. She understood that walking into a situation without full information was how you lost the high ground. And Diane Holt had no intention of losing the high ground. When she felt she knew enough, she got in her car on a Tuesday morning in April of 2012, told Raymond she was going to visit her mother, and drove to Atlanta. She found the address she had mapped from the email headers and cross-referenced with a public property record. It was a house in a quiet part of Atlanta, not large, but well-kept. A child's bicycle in the driveway. A wind chime near the door. Diane sat in her car across the street for 45 minutes. She watched a school bus go by. She watched nothing in particular happen. And then she got out of the car and walked to the front door and knocked. The woman who answered was Angela Mensah. And for a moment, a long, suspended, completely unreal moment, neither woman said anything at all. Diane said, "My name is Diane Holt. Raymond Holt is my husband. I've been married to him for 11 years. Angela looked at her for what she would later describe as the longest 10 seconds of her life. And then Angela stepped back from the door and said, very quietly, "You should come in." What happened inside that house over the next 2 hours is something neither woman has ever fully described in public. What is known, from what Diane later told her friend, and from what Angela shared with a family member, is that they talked. They did not scream at each other. They did not blame each other. They understood almost immediately that they were not adversaries. They were two people who had been assigned the same lie by the same man. Angela showed Diane photographs, years of them, Raymond at Marcus's birthday parties, Raymond in the delivery room, Raymond standing in this very kitchen holding a coffee mug that Diane recognized because she had bought that mug. Diane showed Angela nothing because she had brought nothing. She had not come prepared for a confrontation. She had come prepared to confirm what she already knew. She confirmed it. And something else happened in that room that Raymond Holt would never be able to account for. The two women who had every reason to despise each other decided instead to trust each other. Before we continue, drop your location in the comments below. Where are you watching from right now? We love hearing from you, and if you haven't already, please subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. Angela's first question after the initial shock had settled into something colder and more clear was simple. She asked Diane, "Did you know about me?" Diane said no. Angela asked, "Did you know about Marcus?" Diane said no. And then Angela was quiet for a long time, because everything she thought she understood about Raymond, every excuse she had made, every gap she had filled in with the benefit of the doubt, every night she had explained his absence to her son, had just rearranged itself into something else entirely. She had not been the other woman in a complicated situation. She had been deceived, completely, for 11 years. Her son had been born into a lie that he had no knowledge of and no part in making. And the man who had created that lie was, at this exact moment, in Charlotte, North Carolina, completely unaware that the two women in his life were sitting at the same kitchen table. Angela made 2 cups of coffee. Diane accepted one. And then they did something that Raymond had never once calculated as a possibility. They began to compare notes. They went through the timeline together, not accusatorially, but methodically, the way 2 investigators might reconstruct the movements of a suspect. The dates lined up with horrible precision. The trips Raymond had told Diane were for work were the same trips he had been taking to Atlanta to be with Angela. The family obligation absences he had described to Angela corresponded to weeks he was in Charlotte. Every single alibi had a mirror. Every single story had been calibrated to the specific understanding of the woman he was telling it to. He knew what Diane would ask about and what she wouldn't. He knew what Angela would accept and what she wouldn't. He had studied both of them and managed both of them with the same detached efficiency he brought to his client accounts. By the end of that first conversation, both women understood something that would harden into absolute certainty over the weeks that followed. Raymond Holt was not a man who had made a mistake. Raymond Holt was a man who had made a system. They exchanged phone numbers before Diane left for the drive back to Charlotte. There was no dramatic agreement made that day. No plan was announced. No decision was stated out loud. Diane simply said, "I'll be in touch." And Angela said, "I think we need to talk more." That was all. But something had shifted that could not be unshifted. Raymond came home that evening to a wife who greeted him normally, asked about his day, and said dinner was in the oven. He had no idea. He ate his dinner. He watched television. He went to bed. And Diane lay beside him in the dark, thinking about a boy in Atlanta with his eyebrows. Over the next 3 weeks, Diane and Angela communicated by phone and by email, sometimes daily. They built a shared picture of Raymond's life. The financial one, specifically, that was in many ways the most clarifying. Diane had access as Raymond's wife to most of their joint accounts. Angela had 11 years of records, bank transfers, payment histories, financial documentation that Raymond had established to support Marcus. When they combined those records and mapped them against Raymond's stated income, a picture emerged that was not just evidence of betrayal. It was evidence of financial fraud at a domestic level. Raymond had been diverting funds from a joint savings account that Diane had believed was for retirement. The amount, over 11 years, was significant. Not millions, but enough that when a family attorney reviewed it, the word she used was actionable. Diane hired that attorney 3 weeks after her visit to Atlanta. She did not tell Raymond. She met with the attorney twice before any paperwork was filed, and in those meetings she was precise and calm and brought documentation that the attorney described as unusually thorough for a first consultation. Angela, simultaneously, retained her own attorney in Atlanta, a family law specialist who handled paternity matters. Angela had, in fact, never pursued a formal legal paternity establishment for Marcus, because she had trusted Raymond to be present and contributing voluntarily. That voluntary contribution was about to become a formal legal obligation, and the timing of both filings, Diane's divorce petition and Angela's paternity and child support claim, was not accidental. They were filed in the same week. The same week Raymond Holt, who had managed 2 lives without a single alarm going off for 11 years, learned that both of those lives had been talking to each other for nearly a month. The moment Raymond found out is one that Diane described to her friend in a single sentence. "He came home, he saw the envelope on the kitchen table from my attorney's office, and I watched his face do something I had never seen it do before." He asked her what it was. She told him. He asked if she was serious. She said yes. He asked how she found out. She said she found it herself. And then, And this is the detail that Diane found, somehow, the most telling. He didn't say he was sorry. His first instinct was not remorse. His first instinct was to ask how much she knew. He wanted to assess the damage before he decided how to respond to the damage. Even then, even standing in his own kitchen with a divorce petition on the table, he was in management mode. He was calculating. Diane saw it on his face. She had 11 years of reading that face, and she knew, in that moment, that she was looking at who he actually was. Raymond called Angela from the driveway, still in his car. Angela did not answer. He called again. She did not answer. He sent a message. She did not reply. He drove to Atlanta the following morning, uninvited. Angela opened the door. She told him very quietly that she had retained an attorney. She told him that a paternity claim had been filed. She told him that she had been speaking to Diane. Raymond reportedly went pale. He told Angela that he could explain everything. Angela told him there was nothing to explain. She said, "I know everything I need to know." She closed the door. Raymond Holt stood on the front porch of the house he had been visiting for 9 years and understood, possibly for the first time, that there was no version of this that he could manage his way out of. The legal proceedings that followed took the better part of 18 months. Diane's divorce filing triggered a full financial disclosure. Raymond was required to produce documentation of all assets, accounts, and financial activity. The diversion of funds from the joint savings account became part of the divorce record. The division of marital assets, their home in Charlotte, a vehicle, Raymond's retirement contributions accrued during the marriage, was negotiated in Diane's favor in ways that Raymond's own attorney privately told him were difficult to contest given the circumstances. Angela's paternity filing established Marcus, legally and permanently, as Raymond's son, and the child support order that followed was calculated based on Raymond's full income. The income he had never fully disclosed to Angela, the income that was higher than he had led her to believe, which meant the support calculation came out higher than he had anticipated. Both legal matters resolved within the same general period. Diane kept the house. Raymond did not. But the financial and legal consequences, while significant, were not the thing that Raymond Holt would ultimately identify as his total destruction. It was something that neither attorney had engineered and neither court had ordered. It was something Diane had done on her own, quietly, in the weeks before she filed. Something she had told Angela about, and Angela had not objected to. Diane's career as a paralegal had put her in professional relationship with a number of people in the Charlotte business community. Raymond's career in financial services was built, as all such careers are, on reputation and referral. His client relationships, the accounts that generated his income, the connections that had sustained his professional standing for nearly 2 decades, were relationships of trust. And Diane, who was a paralegal and not a fool, understood what trust meant in that industry and what the absence of it meant. She did not run a campaign. She did not create a website or send mass emails. She reached out, personally, to 3 specific individuals, men and women in Charlotte's business community who knew Raymond professionally, who had referred clients to him, who considered themselves to know him well. She called them. She told them, factually and without drama, what Raymond had done. She did not editorialize. She did not perform. She simply said, "This is what I found, this is what the records show, this is what I thought you should know, and I'll let you decide what to do with that." Within 60 days of those conversations, 2 of Raymond's largest client accounts had quietly transferred to other advisors. A professional contact, who had been on the verge of recommending him to a major referral network, withdrew the recommendation without explanation. His firm, which had learned of the divorce and the circumstances surrounding it through the normal channels of a small professional community, placed him under a performance review. He was not fired immediately. But the trajectory was clear. By the time the divorce was finalized, Raymond's professional standing had contracted in ways that were not recoverable in the short term, possibly not at all. He moved out of the Charlotte home he had shared with Diane and into a rental apartment. He began a period of professional reinvention that his former colleagues described, in the muted language of people who don't want to be unkind, as a challenging transition. Marcus is older now. He knows his father exists. He knows his father is not a constant presence in his life, and he has known that for most of his life, but he now has legal clarity about who his father is, financial support that is court-enforced rather than voluntary, and a mother who, by all accounts, has rebuilt her life with considerable grace. Angela went back to school in the years that followed and completed a graduate degree she had been putting off. She has, from what is known, not remarried. She does not speak about Raymond publicly. She does not need to. Diane sold the Charlotte house 2 years after the divorce was finalized and relocated to Raleigh, where she works for a different law firm and has, by the account of the friend who knew her throughout the entire ordeal, become someone she describes as more herself than she ever was when she was married. And Raymond Holt, he is, by the last known account, working in a diminished professional capacity in a smaller market. He is not in prison. He committed no crime in the legal sense that would put him there. Domestic financial manipulation, while devastating in practice, occupies a complicated space in family law, and Diane's attorneys addressed it through the divorce settlement rather than criminal proceedings. He has not spoken publicly. He has not issued an apology that either woman has acknowledged receiving. He lives, by all indications, a much smaller life than the one he designed for himself. Not because the courts destroyed him, though they took their share. Not because anyone drove him out of his career, though his reputation did not survive intact. But because 2 women he had managed separately for 11 years decided, one afternoon over 2 cups of coffee in Atlanta, that he did not deserve to be managed anymore. Here is what I want you to think about as this story closes. There is a particular kind of arrogance in what Raymond Holt did, not just the infidelity, not just the deception, but the specific assumption that sat beneath all of it. The assumption that Diane would never look. The assumption that Angela would never ask the right questions. The assumption that 2 intelligent women could be kept in permanent ignorance by a man who simply controlled the information they received. He was not smarter than either of them. He was just more willing to lie. And the moment both women stopped relying on his version of events and started talking to each other, the entire structure had nowhere to go but down. He did not lose everything because of a legal system. He did not lose everything because of fate or bad luck or one mistake. He lost everything because he built his life on the premise that the people closest to him were not paying attention. They were. They just hadn't compared notes yet. So here is the question I want you to sit with, and I mean really sit with it, because I think it cuts deeper than it first appears. Raymond Holt was never arrested, never charged, never formally accused of a crime. What Diane and Angela did, the quiet coordination, the timed filings, the careful professional conversations, was entirely legal, entirely deliberate, and entirely devastating. Was that justice? Or was it something else? Was it 2 women enforcing an accountability that no court would have fully delivered on its own? And if it was, does the method matter when the outcome is the one that the truth demanded? Tell me what you think in the comments. I want to hear where you land on that. And tell me where you're watching from while you're down there, because this community stretches further than you might think, and every comment reminds me why these stories matter. If this one held you from beginning to end, please subscribe. There is another story coming that begins exactly where this one ends, with a man who thought his careful life was secure right up until the moment it was. You do not want to miss it.